What if Kanae was saved by Shinobu during her encounter with Doma? Would her skill as a Hashira be able to save just one more life? And most importantly, what would this mean for the final fate of Shinobu? Well, I've racked in my brain as many times as I can, and here's what would happen if Kanae survived and somehow won. But first, what's her backstory? Well, Kanae and her younger sister Shinobu are from a wealthy family whose past is the same as most, which begins with demons massacring their loved ones. And with the help of Giyu, they were saved in the nick of time. This drove the sisters to be strong so that no other person will feel the same pain they felt. But the first mention of Kanae is in a flashback when she and Shinobu come across Kanao being leashed by a slave owner. So what did they do? Well, in a funny heroic act, they pull Kanao away from the slave owner as Shinobu throws bills and coins in the air for the man to collect in panic. Kanae laughs at the situation while being relieved that Kanao will be in better hands. And do you remember what happens next? Well, Kanae goes on to encounter Doma, but this time things take a turn for the better. Or do they? Well, as Kanae fought against fate, she seemingly survived in her duel against Doma and even managed to do some serious damage. However, we can't forget the fact that Doma is insanely strong, so in this case, Kanae technically won by immobilizing Doma enough for her to escape with her life. This gives a massive change in the story of Demon Slayer, and that's what we are going to talk about. So what would happen to the main storyline? Well, the plot of Demon Slayer would continue as usual, and it's only until we reach a point of the Mount Natagumo arc where Kanae would breach the canon events and basically start a different universe. In this arc, Tanjiro, Nezuko, Zenitsu, and Inosuke will fight the Spider family, flaunting their flashy techniques that are certified Uzui Tengen approved. But it's not as if our heroes are invincible. After their grueling fights, Inosuke is severely injured, and Tanjiro is in the last straw of hope, especially since Zenitsu is poisoned near to his death. But by the Demon Slayer's correspondence, they signal their code red, and which Hashiras are best suited for this job? Well, it's gotta be Kanae, the current flower Hashira, accompanied by Giyu, the water Hashira. It's only logical to replace Shinobu in this case as she's following the path of her sister as Sugoku, since Shinobu's Hashira slot in the source material is something she technically acquired after Kanae's death. So does this mean Zenitsu will fall to his death because of Shinobu's absence? Well, I did say that Kanae replaced the Hashira role, but it doesn't mean that Shinobu's skill is not valuable enough for her not to be deployed alongside her sister. Only this time, she will act as her Sugoku instead of Kanao. So will they arrive on time? Well, appearing as two beautiful badass queens, Kanae and Shinobu heals the toxins that infected Zenitsu, while they both split up for more coverage. Kanae's greater tracking skills would dash her towards the strongest concentration of power, which is in Tanjiro's direction. At that point, Tanjiro and Rui are having their confrontation, as Nezuko also tag teams with him in this fight. But as Kanae searches for Rui, she spots the accomplice named the Daughter, who just trapped another Demon Slayer through a blood demon art, wrapping him in a web cocoon. Kanae sweeps the floor with the Daughter, as the Daughter tries to play with Kanae's sympathy. But would the outcome change in this fight change, given the differences between Kanae's and Shinobu's personalities? Well, Shinobu in the source material was more ruthless to this demon who tried to play tricks on her, showing a more sinister side to her hatred of demons because Kanae died. On the other hand, this scene would play out as quickly as a blink of an eye, which is actually a good thing if you're the demon. Due to Kanae's kind-hearted nature, she is more forgiving, which is why she delivers a swift, painless blow to the Daughter's spider demon as a form of mercy and saves a Demon Slayer as she continues her pursuit. Either way, the Daughter demon will get killed. What about the fight against the Lower Moon? Well, she arrives late, as Tanjiro and Giyu have already succeeded in defeating the Lower Moon demon. It might seem that everything's going all good and well for our heroes, but suddenly, a quick flash of flowers will strike Nezuko, but Giyu and Tanjiro will block her away. She proves to be a more formidable opponent than Shinobu, since her expertise far outlives Giyu, which if turned against a weakened Tanjiro would definitely spell the end for our siblings' journey. But it's not long before Nezuko and Tanjiro make a run for it as Giyu holds back Kanae, while at this time, she is confident that her little sister Shinobu, acting as her Sugoku, would catch the duo. So what happens next? Well, Shinobu replaces Kanao in this scenario, and not a lot of changes happen except that Nezuko would be struck by Shinobu's poison, given her superior abilities compared to Kanao in the original series. But an antidote is injected just as quickly into Nezuko as an emergency signal from HQ tells them to bring the siblings back to safety. After this not so drastic change of events, what would happen next? Well, Nezuko and Tanjiro's trial would go on the same as the source material. Kaguya would explain the circumstances of the siblings to the Hashira and so on. But one difference here is when Sanemi threatened Nezuko in the canon plot. He gave a bad time for both of the siblings, but in this timeline, he wouldn't go so far as to stab Nezuko, since Kanae is actually one of the people who are in a good relationship with him, and she wouldn't like too much aggressiveness. In the official fan book, Gyome's impression of Sanemi is that he likes Kanae. Although this is only a suspicion, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that the two have a thing going on. But considering the same outcomes will happen, there's nothing that can go different in this timeline, right? Well, that's where you're wrong, because Kanao wouldn't be a demon slayer at all, or at the very least is still in her early training stage. This is because we have to consider Kanao's past as a deeply traumatized child who is still in the process of healing. But why is that? Well, what makes this change relevant is that in this timeline, Kanae's existence is that of a sister who will unnecessarily put her younger sister to harm's way, and so Kanao wouldn't be pushed as hard to improve her skills as there was no traumatizing event that would toughen her up further to rush her development. Yet, that is. Does that mean Kanao is weak? Well, in this timeline, she'd still help with the training and recovery of the trio in the Butterfly Mansion, but it doesn't mean that she's that weak though, as because of her innate skills, she will prove to be better than Tanjiro and his friends during the training montage, displaying the same strength as she did even though she has no Nichiren blade to call her own yet. In the original series, Tanjiro confronts Shinobu about how he sends great anger within her, despite her cheerful display of personality, to which then Shinobu reveals why she is masking her emotions, that her sister died in her arms back when she was younger and constantly reminded her to always show a great smile. But what about in this story? Will Shinobu still have that same personality? Well, since the Shinobu of this alternate timeline isn't broken by her sister's death, Shinobu will generally have a massive identity change. She will maintain a brash, loud, and extroverted personality, but still remains to be Giyu's #1 bully. And this last trait is true in every universe. Now, how would Kanae react to Tanjiro and Nezuko's existence, seeing as Shinobu even accepted them? Well, what would happen is Kanae will have a hearty talk to Tanjiro about how she hopes humankind and the demons would coexist one day, and she is actually overjoyed as to the possibilities that the sibling duo will bring to humanity. She then follows this up by teaching him how to do total concentration breathing, which is a skill that will help save Tanjiro's life in the height of future battles. But we're forgetting something important. Kanae's death boosted Shinobu and Kanao's skills in being demon slayers. Are they just as strong now? Well, by that stretch, both Kanao and Shinobu's power levels would be somewhat weaker than in the original timeline, as their drive for power and hatred for demons wouldn't be as intense. So considering how their powers are important in defeating Muzan during the final arc, it begs the question of what could substitute their power in the upcoming fights. Well, keep watching and find out. The Mugen train arc would begin exactly the same as Tanjiro, Nezuko, Inosuke, and Zenitsu catch up to an eating Rengoku. So would the addition of a new powerful Hashira complicate things? Well, if Kanae could run at the speed of light, then yes, but she probably couldn't, as even the top Hashiras weren't of any help to the Mugen train situation, so Rengoku was still destined to meet his ultimate fate as a donut. However, is it after the fight has ended that major changes will happen? But what are they? Well, considering Shinobu's strength, she would fill in Rengoku's spot as a Hashira, since he also doesn't have a Sugoku. But whether this changes things for the final battle still remains to be seen, especially since Shinobu's strength here is comparably weaker than before. The Entertainment District and Swordsmith Village arcs would continue as usual, since the key persons that Kanae impacts are Kanao and Shinobu, both of which don't have any major involvement in these arcs. But during the Swordsmith Village arc, the Hashiras would eventually find out about the Demon Slayer mark, to which they'd undergo training the whole Corps, as they also prepare to battle Muzan. So how will Kanae be involved in the training? Well, Kanae will train the other Demon Slayers in perception training, similar to how the final form of her breathing style works. With this, Tanjiro and the others will have their senses strengthened, increasing the chances of revealing his enemy's weaknesses. On the other hand, Shinobu would probably give more focus to the collaborative development of the poison that will weaken Muzan with Tameo. Towards the final battle, Kanae's survival in the encounter with Doma is a double-edged sword. Why? Well, since it's not only Kanae who has concentrated her efforts on defeating Doma, but she herself has also left an impression on the demon. And this will turn out in the worst way possible, as during the final battle in the Infinity Castle, since Kanae was a catch that Doma failed to acquire the last time, he won't pass up the opportunity to devour her. Basically, he will make Kanae his priority meal, or those closest to her. So how will this play out? Well, this exactly brings Kanae to first encounter a Doma who is close to eating Kanao. However, this manhunt goes both ways, as Kanae revives just in the nick of time and block Doma's final blow on Kanao. However, Kanao would be wounded for the rest of the battle. Doma would maintain his cheerful personality while Kanae unleashes a barrage of flower-breathing techniques at him. This intense clash would shake the whole Infinity Castle as the two sworn enemies fight for their old debts. The first phase of the fight will be a result of total destruction of their surroundings as ice and petals decorate the rubble. But if Doma was able to take down Kanae in the original series, how will she survive this second rematch? Well, the showdown continues, and Kanao will barely be standing on her own, and Kanae will freeze at the realization that she has her sword snatched away from her, as Doma increases the intensity of his blood demon art in the air. This fight's stake is higher because, as we all know, that back in the original plot, Doma is weakened due to the wisteria poison made by Shinobu, but in this alternate timeline, Kanae only has her personal training in her arsenal. The poison that was injected into Doma took a whole year to make, so her brute force might be less effective in this situation. So what would this mean for Kanae and Kanao? Well, it would mean that it's time for backup, as Shinobu and Inosuke will come for the assist. However, enough is enough for Kanae, as she activates her equinoctial vermilion eyes, all the while a Demon Slayer mark sneaks upon her face. With this surge of power, the four defeat Doma, but he won't go down fighting as in his demise. He will fire off his final attack, the Water Lily Bodhisattva, to a weakened Kanao. Will this be Kanao's untimely death? Well, it's not the end yet, as Kanae will deflect it using the full thrust of her vermilion eyes, which causes her to go blind in both eyes. After Doma's defeat, they all heard for the inevitable battle against Muzan. The landscape at this point is at its lowest, with only Obanai and Tanjiro on the offensive. So how will they help in this battle? Well, Kanae sacrifices her already blinded eyesight in last-ditch effort to stall Muzan, guiding Tanjiro's movesets and backing him up during the other Hashira's downtime. Due to Sanemi's friendship with Kanae, he will be her eyes as they both gain access to the transparent world, guiding her surroundings, and so he exerts more effort in this fight. Shinobu's fighting strength might be the lowest among the Hashira, but her exemplary agility and toxins are her biggest advantage, which is why she'd be able to cushion and evade fatal blows while progressively increasing the effects of Muzan's poison. With this increase in firepower and effectiveness in their attacks, will they have a much easier time compared to the original series? Well, Shinobu's disadvantage is that she's more reckless with her abilities, which is why when Muzan sees an opening, he flings a whip in her direction, about to deal a fatal blow, when suddenly, Kanae takes the brunt of his attack. In this quick moment, Kanae draws her final smile towards Shinobu and Kanao, keeping true to her love as their older sister as she lies to her death. This makes the two girls devastated by Kanae's sacrifice. But if there's anything that this epic show taught us, is that as long as one person is alive, it's not the end yet. And this is the exact burning passion within Tanjiro's heart and blade as he deals a final blow against Muzan, and they manage to win as the sun rises. But as we all know, this isn't the end yet. Suddenly, Tanjiro turns into a demon, and a panicking Nezuko tries to stop him. However, with Kanae's sacrifice, Kanao will unlock the final form of flower breathing technique. Wanting to bring the human conversion serum to a rampaging Tanjiro, she would sustain significant damage to one eye, but would still be successful in turning Tanjiro back to a human as everyone cheers for a long-awaited victory. With Kanae's sacrifice and efforts, Giyu, Sanemi, and Shinobu will be the only Hashiras left standing, ending the story of Demon Slayer. So what did you think of these events? Make sure to comment down below your thoughts. Also, have you ever thought about why Rokodaki always wears a mask? Check out the video on our other channel to find out.